Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of McNulty's Book Corral. I'm your host, Thomas McNulty. And guess what we're talking about today? One of my favorite topics. We're talking about Westerns. So, the idea here is that you have that space on your bookcase and you'd like to fill it with some Westerns. What do you want? What do you need? What are good Westerns to read? So, let's make some recommendations today. And we're going to start with The Virginian by Owen Wister. And this is the early 60s paperback from Cardinal. I'm sure you're familiar with the book. For those of you who are already Western fans, The Virginian by Owen Wister is one of the first great Westerns. Highly recommended. It's a little dated, but it holds up well. It's a good book. I like it. Then we're going to get to one of my favorites. And as you know from watching this video series, I am a collector as well as a reader. So we're going to get into Zane Grey a little bit. I'm going to recommend Riders of the Purple Sage. Now this edition is the facsimile edition put out by Zane Grey's West Society, which is a great organization. I'm a member of it. They put out specialty books now and again. They're on Facebook. They're on the internet. If you get a chance, check out Zane Grey's West Society. Riders of the Purple Sage is the standard, along with The Virginian, considered probably two of the greatest Westerns ever published. I am a Zane Grey fan and collector. So with that said, as I've mentioned in previous episodes, I'm looking for rare books. I collect rare books. Zane Grey is one of the authors whose work I do collect. And for you collectors out there, signed editions are fairly common. This is Thunder Mountain, which was a specialty signed edition put out by I think it was Grosset and Dunlap. Yeah, this was the Grosset and Dunlap signed edition from Zane Grey, and I think you can see that on the camera. Let's see if that'll pick it up. They're fairly common. Zane Grey is fun to collect. He's fun to read. He holds up very well. He's a little dated, but I am a major Zane Grey fan and collector, so I can't resist encouraging you to seek out other titles in addition to Riders of the Purple Sage. Now, that leads us to one of the greatest Westerns ever written and one of the greatest films ever made in Hollywood, which is Shane by Jack Schaefer. Most of you are familiar with this paperback edition, which I believe is still in print. It was put out by Bantam, dozens and millions of copies. I can't even begin to tell you how often this book has been reprinted. Interesting side note on Jack Schaefer's Shane, it's only 42,000 words. It's a novella. That is not a word count that's popular today. By comparison, today's books on the market are overproduced, overwrought, overdone, overbaked. 200,000 word, 1,000-page bestsellers that are almost impossible to read. The short form was the standard for many years. 40 to 65, 70,000 words was about right. This is 42,000 words. It's a great book. It's a book that's been imitated by dozens of writers unsuccessfully, I might add. First-person narrative. You can't do it. Jack Schaefer did it better than anyone else. I am a collector of Jack Schaefer's work. I don't have a signed edition of Shane, but here is the second hardcover edition, which was released at the same time that the Alan Ladd film was put out in the early 1950s, 53, I think. The first edition hardcover of Shane is about a $3,000 book, if you can find a really good copy. That I've never encountered myself. I do see it in auction catalogs. I've never found it. But this second edition is pretty close to that first edition from just a few years earlier. So I'm really happy to have the second hardcover edition from the early 50s. As far as signed copies, again, for you book collectors, I love to promote that idea of collecting. I do have a signed edition of Jack Schaefer's hardcover first edition of his collected short stories, and some of his other novellas are in here. And this is signed on the title page. So let's see if you can get that in there. I know the light's pretty bright. So there you go. There's a signed edition of Jack Schaefer. I love collecting signed editions, as I've made clear in other episodes. So there we have three of the greatest Westerns ever published. We have The Virginian, we have Riders of the Purple Sage, and we have Shane by Jack Schaefer. Let's talk about some contemporary authors. You know, I have to mention Louis L'Amour. Louis L'Amour is responsible, along with Zane Grey, I believe, for popularizing the Western and making Western literature what it is. I am a collector of Louis L'Amour as well as Zane Grey. And I chose to show off today, I just picked this because I happen to have a signed copy. This is Guns of the Timberland. This is the first hardcover edition from the early 50s. And this was actually a reprint under his own name from 1955. So this book is 64 years old. The dust jacket on this is a facsimile. The original dust jacket did not survive. It is signed by L'Amour. It's the only L'Amour signed copy I have, and I do collect L'Amour. Now, Guns of the Timberlands is not one of Louis L'Amour's best novels, but it's a really good novel, and I like to promote it for people that are unfamiliar with his work as a good entry point for exploring his career. I'm really fond of the book. It was originally published under the pseudonym Jim Mayo, I believe. This is one of his early works, and then this was reprinted first edition hardcover under his own name. I collect different editions. Here's the modern edition, which doesn't have a great cover at all. Here's one of the more popular editions with the painted covers, and then we have some really earlier editions of Guns of the Timberlands in paperback. This was the edition that coincided with the Alan Ladd film. I believe it was the early 60s, late 50s. I have to look that up. So this edition is also sought after by collectors. And then finally we have one of the 1950 editions. So I do collect Louis L'Amour, all of Louis L'Amour's titles. I have them all. And certain titles that I enjoy, such as this one, I collect multiple editions. That's not unusual for book collectors, for those of you interested in that type of thing. Let's talk about a couple more recommendations for that space on your bookcase that you're going to fill with Westerns. 44 by H.A. DeRosso. This book is very well known among Western aficionados. It's a great book, hard-boiled. The Shootist by Glendon Swarthout has been imitated, along with Jack Schaefer Shane, imitated and, if not plagiarized, by numerous authors. Great book, unequaled. It's probably Swarthout's best book. He wrote a lot of other books that I think are really good. They're not all Westerns. And then we have William W. Johnstone and The Last Mountain Man. Here's a nice hardcover. This was a series that he did, and it was a great series. He really put out a lot. These books are still being published today by his niece is handling the branding since he passed away. But this first one, The Last Mountain Man, this is a great book. Lots of fun, widely available. And in fact, all of the books that I'm talking about today, you can find on Amazon or eBay. So check that out. See if you can find them. Fill that space on your bookcase. Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. You can't talk about Westerns without talking about Lonesome Dove. Great book. It's McMurtry's best book, along with Comes a Horseman, I think, was another one I enjoyed. Here's some modern authors, contemporary authors that are writing Westerns today. Where Bullets Fly by Terrence McCauley. Great book. Really enjoyable. He has another Western on the market and some modern espionage suspense thrillers that I read that are really good as well. All right, John D. Nesbitt. I have a really good collection of John D. Nesbitt's books. I just picked Twin Rivers because it was one of the first ones that I read. This is from the 90s. He is still out there publishing. He's a great writer. Check his books out on Amazon if you can find John D. Nesbitt. Easy to find. Excellent stuff. Another one, Joseph A. West, Shootout at Picture Rock. This also goes back to the 90s. Now, Joseph West is also well known for writing, I think, 6 Gunsmoke novels based upon the TV series. I thought they were great. I think he's a great writer. This is my favorite of his books. He has many other books on the market. Please check them out. Joseph A. West, along with John Nesbitt, are two authors that I believe deserve more attention. Their books are fantastic. Please check them out. Amazon, find these guys. They're really good authors. And then we're going to end it today with the author that I think is the one that's comparable to Zane Grey and Louis L'Amour as far as his popularity and his influence. I don't think Peter Brandvold is going to like hearing that, because I'm not sure if he likes Zane Grey or Louis L'Amour. But either way, Peter Brandvold, here we go. Here's one of his more recent books, okay, The Cost of Dying. He publishes with a wide variety of publishers. Along with Pinnacle, he works for Wolfpack, and he puts out his own ebooks and so forth. And you can find this stuff on Amazon really easily. And speaking of signed editions, thank you, Pete, this past Christmas for sending me The Cost of Dying signed by you. I sincerely appreciate that. Peter Brandvold is the #1 best-selling Western author in the United States, as far as I know. If I'm wrong, let me know. But if he's not, I would be shocked to hear that he's not. Everybody reads Peter Brandvold. He's the one out there that everybody wishes they had his career. So, tip of the Stetson to Pete, Old Mean Pete. Here you go. We're going to end this episode with that. And that was a lot of fun. Now, I would be lax if I didn't promote my own Westerns. So here's Trail of the Burned Man. This was my first Western with Robert Hale. The back cover reproduces the first edition hardcover and the large print edition that followed. And this is the third and current edition on the market. It's available on Amazon for the low cost of $10.50. And there you go. Trail of the Burned Man is the one Western I've written that people have reacted to the best. It's my best-selling Western title. So check out Trail of the Burned Man by Thomas McNulty. And that wraps it up. Now, I want to mention that this is the first episode where we're going to talk about Western novels. All right, so that's a pretty good space on your bookshelf that you're going to fill, because right now you're all logging on to Amazon and you're going to order all these books up, okay? You're going to buy them all. And start with Brandvold and then please get to mine. I just had to throw that in. Fill your bookcase up, pass these books around, read them, talk about them, discover America's greatest genre, the Western, okay? It's America's quintessential genre. There's no other genre that belongs to us as much as the Westerns do. So there you go. Another episode, more episodes on Westerns to come. As always, thank you for checking in, and remember to stay healthy, stay happy, feed your brain, read a book.